Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Challenge with John Chapman. I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness. And finally, we got the song back. So I'm just going to let it play for a minute. Going to let it marinate the intro a little bit. You can just, can you feel it? Just bask in that right there. There it is. Do you feel it? Here it is. And this is the key. It's coming up. Here it is. Listen in.
I will sing to you all my days, 'cause it's Jesus in the morning, Jesus at the noontime, Jesus in the evening.
Ta-da, there it is. We've finally brought that back into the program for those of you, I don't know, nobody complained, like nobody said, hey, I missed it, but I'll tell you who did miss it. I did. I missed it terribly. I wanted that back in there so bad. We finally got that figured out, at least for now. I hope you've enjoyed that. It's good to have the intro song back in there. It's good to have you tuning in with us today on social media platforms. Some fun information today. Always appreciate you joining us. Always thankful to whitedoveministries.net, the sponsor of the challenge here. And our job is what we are trying to do is bring back religion and politics to the table. And when I say religion and politics, everybody's invited to the conversation. Everybody's invited to the conversation. Whatever your religious background, you're invited to the conversation, because I believe that even your basic belief system, and it's fundamental to have a belief system. Everybody has a belief system. Mine is that there is a God in heaven who created intentionally this planet and all the universe. And along with that, he has a love towards you and me as individuals, making us after his image. And we have been saved from eternal peril by his son, Jesus Christ. Yours, you need to know. I was with a client the other day doing work because, like you, I too have to work. And that's good. Keeps me kind of connected to what's going on around in my life and your life and the life of what's going on in the world. And he was interested in what it was we were doing here in the platform of this. We're local based, we're Central Iowa based, and we're talking to the issues going on here on locally in Des Moines, in Polk County, surrounding areas in those communities, the state of Iowa. But we're also talking about national issues and worldwide issues too. Not because we individually can come together and have a huge impact on those. Like, I'm not a big, hey, if we all do this, we can save the world or we can change the world. Not so big on that idea, because I think of the reflection of what's going on worldwide, globally, in the United States, and even locally. This is the closest that we have. That the first impact you have is the impact of yourself, the control of yourself. And where does that come from? Even, by the way, if you're declared atheist, that's a fundamental belief. It's a religious ideal, and that should come to the table in the conversation too. And I'm going to chat with you. If you don't believe in a God, that's okay, because I'm going to try to convince you that there is, because of the knowing and the hope that I live in now, because of the work of Jesus Christ. So in the midst of that, and we're bringing it all into the table, right? Because too long, people have been made, and I'm going to say Christians have been the ones who have been picked on in this. And later on in the segment, we're gonna see a different area where people of faith who have been Christians in particular get picked on a little bit anyway. And I feel like the idea. What's funny to me is that the idea of being a Christian and not being able to bring that to the table is funny, because Christianity is Christ inside of you, the hope of glory. There's no other religion in the world. Who I heard an interesting video cast earlier today. There's no other religion in the world that actually advocates for the God that you believe in coming inside of you and living there. And maybe that's a new concept to you. Maybe you're a Christian and you haven't come to understand that that's exactly what has happened. That's what goes on in your life. And so it is not a belief system of mental assent. It is a belief system of power and purchase payment that Jesus has done. And in so doing, the righteousness of God comes to abide in you, and then you're being changed by that every single day. And as a result of that, you cannot help but bring your religion to the table in the conversation of, be it politics or whatever it is we're talking about. Our last podcast last week, man, that was out of this world. Glenn was here in studio with me, and we were talking about the debt, things that we need to be considering. When we look at the state of the world and what's happening, we should wrap our minds around that. And when we see these things as Christians, they're signs. It's telling us what the scriptures have already told. So every day that I come in here on the podcast, everything that we recognized, everything that we're seeing, everything we're pointing out, the scriptures already talked about these things happening, which is why we're here to encourage you that in Christ, in your own life of faith, also, and I would argue that with you on the table, you want to know that you know right? So life is more than politics, although we talk about it quite a bit here. Life is more than politics. I also want to invite you to come join us on the live chat. So if you have a Rumble account, and we are here on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. live Central Time. If you have a Rumble account, get involved with the conversation because it comes right up here on my screen. I do my best to watch that coming up there. You'll find the connective information that you need to find out where we come from, who we are, who I am. And I want you to go to that. And if you're local, like if you're a Des Moines person, a person of Des Moines, I have been negatively affected by the culture around me, have I not? I'm a person of Des Moines. Anyway, if you're a Des Moines resident or near there, we also produce a think piece and a discussionary piece. A big shout out there to our radio, where we put a radio commercial out there too. And if you enjoy a little country music, you can certainly do that by going to 93.7 there and enjoy what we do between 7 and 10. You're going to hear a little 1-minute think piece in there and enjoy it. Hopefully you get a chance to do that. Today, there's two things that have come up that I want to talk about in this hour. And first and foremost, it was just a curiosity to me about the exchange of the Russian prisoners. Now, the first point of curiosity to me is that this is an election year. And so being the cynic that I am, the first thing I did was, well, of course, we're going to have an exchange of prisoners because it's usually seen as being compassionate, right? An effort to try to get American prisoners released. And the news usually reports on the Americans that are being released and the emphasis of that. And I have to admit that even when conservatives are in power, they try to go see who we got. And so this time I'm going to pick on it the other way around. As the Biden administration, the Kamala Harris /Biden, Obama administration are all in place, what they have done. And so for the first time, I thought, I want to know, and I thought this on my own, I want to know who we gave up. And so I went to the media, and of course it's always, hey, look who we got. And that's fine. But it took me 4 Google pages in to find the first conservative article that actually shares about who we gave up. And, slap to me, I should be paying attention to that no matter who the administration is. And so that I have a less biased opinion on these things too. But today I'm leaning heavily towards my own bias because I found that kind of interesting. First, to address the skepticism, I thought, well, certainly this is not politically motivated, right? There's not a political implication that's trying to be happening here because this is an election year. I'd be dumb to put 2 and 2 together on that, right? Well, if you remember, and I have it written down here on this notation piece of paper that I use when the copier puts out bad copies, then to resourcefully reuse paper, I take the junk copy, flip it in half, and see I can write notes on it. So I'm doing my part. Whatever my part is, I'm doing it. July 8th, 2022. Maybe you know where I'm going with this. July 8th, 2022. What is that? That is the election midterm. This is the midterm election, right? And during 2022, that is 2 years after Joe Biden assumed power. We'll say that 2 years after Joe Biden has assumed power. And today we're not going to argue how that happened, but I have my thoughts on that. 2 years after that, the midterm, there's 435 seats in the House of Representatives that were up for the taking and 100 Senate seats. And what did happen is the flip of power. A few more conservatives eked in there, and but the growth of the left grew in power in the Senate 2 years ago. But what I did notice was it was Brittany Griner. I apologize. I don't mean, I'm not trying to misstate her name. I genuinely don't know because I really wasn't paying attention back in the day when that was going on. Interesting, at midterm in July 8th, 2022, a deal was struck up to get her back too. So it's interesting to me. maybe there's a deal that's been struck up and somebody can find me that information and send it to us. That's fine with that. That happened in 2023, maybe happened in 2021. I don't know. I'm not a government official. Maybe those things are happening all the time. But I'm noting today that these two exchanges are big news and they happen on election cycles. I'm just saying. Okay. I'm just saying. There you have it. Obviously, zero political motivation. I need to be careful. My wife says sometimes I get a little too sarcastic, and she is right about that. She helps keeps me in check, and I want to be in check in that very well. But today I'm exercising some a heavy amount of that, most assuredly. So in this article that I have, and this is from the Fox News Network. Sometimes they lean conservative. I think when they first came out, they do. I have not been all that happy with some of their information, but just so you know, here it is from their network, of course. And at least you can go there. There it is, foxnews.com. That is my source here. Who was involved in the Russian prisoner swap? And this, I like talking about this stuff because it makes me think a little bit. What does that look like? And I want to find out. And this isn't that show. I would encourage you to do that. Who did we get in return? And how important was that? But I do find it very interesting who we gave up in this. So Russia received 8 criminals. Okay, I think we got 12. 12. I don't know. Maybe my producer can look that up. I think we got 12 in return. And but they got 8. And here's the word. So at the top of their list, their priority, at least according to Fox, here's their priority list. In a historic prisoner swap that saw a total of 24 detainees. Oh, there you go. We got more than that then. 24, the United States did. 24 detainees released in a complex deal involving 7 nations, including the U.S. and Germany. So they had a hand in this too. Here were the faces, they said the faces of evil that were allowed to return to Russia. I'm going to do my best at my Russian here. The first one of them here was Vadim Krozikov. I like trying to see if I can sound like that. Vadim Krozikov. And it says here he was the top pick for the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. And he was a hitman who used the alias of Vladimir Sokolov. I could be Russian. I think I could be. And he was convicted in a German court in 2019 for the assassination. So he was convicted of the crime, the assassination of former Chechen commander near Berlin's parliamentary building. So that's interesting. So here is a hitman, and Vladimir wants him back right now. And he's already been charged with murder in this. So I find that interesting. And it says that it is rumored, or apparently, when they say he apparently, I'm going to say rumored because there's no source behind that. He apparently carried out the assassination on the order of Moscow's security services. So first guy back, Moscow is ordered to hit. Jason Bourne lives, right? Moscow's ordered to hit, and they get him back. So we've given up an assassin of a German who was of a Russian assassination, who was in German criminal court and prosecuted for this. Second one, Roman Seleznev. Roman Seleznev, the son of a member of Russian parliament, was sentenced to 27 years in prison after he was convicted of hacking into more than 500 U.S. businesses and stealing millions of credit cards. Stealing millions of credit cards. This is and here it is. I'm sorry. Here is the my producer's going, hey, you got to talk to me a little better. Who was involved in the article was who was involved in Russia prisoner swap? Who was involved in the Russian prisoner swap? So there it is. There's that information. Sorry about that. So here it is. So Seleznev, the son of a member of Russian parliament, was sentenced 27 years in prison after he was convicted of, and this is a big deal to me. I don't know if you've ever wondered this. He was convicted of hacking into more than 500 U.S. businesses and stealing millions of credit card numbers. When does this not become a big deal? Have you ever wondered, maybe you have been, you ever think about it when they talk about there's a lot of people out there hacking your system. There's a lot of people out there hacking your numbers, your credit card numbers. There's people out there who are swindling people. And I sit back and I just seethe, right? I just go, who's going to do something with these people? How are we going to do something with these people that nobody seems to be able to find And millions of people lose identities. They lose credit card numbers. They're hacked into those systems. How many of us have gotten a letter? We have. I'm going to have to check my wife on this. We've got one for sure from the eye clinic from which she had a surgical procedure done that actually said, we got to tell you, our system's been compromised. And some of your personal information may have been compromised. And this is what they do. They say, we are going to give you a free identity protection service company. We're going to hook you up with, if you want to protect your identity. And it's always upset me that this is the route they go. And yet it would appear to me, here's that very kind of guy here, Roman Seleznev. Roman Seleznev may be the guy that hacked my information at the expense of the eye medical clinic. I'm not saying that he did, but this is the kind of stuff I go, what can they do to actually catch these people? And it upsets me because it really disrupts people's private lives. It disrupts everything that you work for. And there it is. And President Biden, and I'm only saying that because he is the president, or at least he assumed power, has let this guy go. And you know what we got? A continued compromise in our identity and the security of that. Now, I don't know that this guy is a part of that, but I want to know when our nation's going to get serious about that. I mean, really serious about that, because these people don't pay anything back. There's not a one thing they can do to pay anything back on this. And this upsets me. So we're giving up a guy for that. Oh, there you have it. Here's another one. Vadim Konosh, it's Kenonok. Kenoshet. Okay, hold on. Let me cough this out. Vadim Konoshevnok. Konoseshonok. That's as good as I'm going to go. A Russian citizen with alleged ties to Russia's Federal Security Services, the FSB, and he was accused of providing U.S.-made electronics and ammunition to the Russian military. Apparently, that's not a big deal anymore, so we gave him up. And I know these happen, right? I mean, when you're president of the United States, all presidents have to do activity that is dangerous, illegal, kill people. Every president has to do it. They do hit orders going on overseas. Obama did an extensive amount of this under the presidential authority, which he had. I'm actually thankful that he had the power to do that. Obama got a lot of things done that way. And here we are exchanging these things. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but these are the questions that come up in my mind. And they help reveal to me what kind of society we live in when we're dealing with criminals and we're exchanging criminals back and forth. Criminals that could have my debit card number. That bothers me. It really does. Maybe it shows us where we are at in our society, where somehow we become okay with this. We become comfortable in IDs. But that bothers me. I'm just throwing that out there with you. That bothers me a lot, right? And if you're just tuning in, glad you've joined us here on the Rumble program, The Challenge. And you can get on your Rumble account right now. You can get involved in the conversation. I want to encourage you to do that. Also putting a shout out there for whitedoveministries.net. They are the support of this outreach. And so a big thank you to them. But if you're listening in right now, please feel free to get involved in the conversation. Bring your religion and politics and your thoughts to the table. So that is interesting that this guy has provided sensitive information and of American-made electronics and munitions. So once again, this is no shock. Whatever goes on, the United States has a tendency to fund the wars that are going on or accidentally leave behind equipment in Iran. You know where I'm going with that. And then this guy gets sent back to Russia after making sure he has sold munitions from the U.S. back to Russia. I don't know. It seems like we're paying for everything. What is that last week we talked about too? What are we? We're at 123% debt load. So we pay 23% in of our taxes go straight to the debt, and everything else straight to the cost of the debt, the APR the financing of the debt, and then the rest of it's just debt. So apparently we can afford this. There's that sarcasm again. Sorry about that. And then we have, let's see, here's another one. Here is Vladislav Klyushin, a Russian businessman who was convicted for his involvement in an elaborate hack-to-trade scheme. Here we go. hacking back into the computer systems on trade, approximately 93 million. I'm sure just pennies to them through securities trades based on confidential corporate information stolen from U.S. computer networks. Corporate information stolen from computer networks. So glad we freed him. That's a problem. Pavel Rubstov, he was identified as a Russian spy by Poland's internal security agency in 2022, just 2 years ago, working as a journalist for the Spanish media. It's even hard to know when you think about this. These people who are giving up in all this. Here's one: Artem Dulcev. He was arrested on espionage charges in Slovenia in 2022. So these guys are not long termers, right? But a couple of them, especially the top ones, are pretty serious criminals. So here's one: Mikhail Mikushin. I'm pretty good at that, don't you think? Maybe there's some Russian in me somewhere. He was arrested in Norway in 2022, also on espionage charges. My homeland of Norway, lived there for nearly a year. Love that place, absolutely gorgeous. Totally could not afford to live there, and but anyway, I digress. So here's the class of people that are going back there and being released of this. Is this a concern? Is this a deal? Is it a political move? Are we just trying to pat? I guarantee you, it's going to happen, isn't it? Kamala Harris is going to say, we got a good trade. We got a good trade. We only gave up 8 criminals for the, whatever it is, 14 that we got back in American citizens. It's going to be the thing. It's going to be a thing. They're going to talk about it. It's absolutely going to happen during this. Are they not? Oh, I appreciate one of our listeners. No, John, meaning me. No, you cannot be Russian, my brother. I'm sorry. I appreciate the candid honesty there. I did my best. I like rolling the R's really heavy, but thank you, RB. I don't know. I still think I'm pretty good at it. I could never be a Swedish boxer in a Rocky IV movie pretending to be a Russian. That is absolutely sure. And apparently I can't be Russian either. I'm going to take that as a compliment because there's too much freedom living me, right? Absolutely. So the other thing, because this is not an election deal, this stuff that's going on. Politico releases an article, and I love this, right? So this is their slant on it. Trump congratulates Putin on great hostage swap. And as you know, the media is always good about quoting the largest part of that entire idea. In this case, it was one word: great. Trump congratulates Putin on great hostage swap. Well, we all know Trump. What he's doing is being sarcastic, right? But this political article starts by making Trump look like he's actually on Putin's side, right? So they have to do that. That, as we know, is called the professional spin. So spin all you want. That is all that is. And so that, of course, is not political at all. Something I just want to acknowledge there. And so I find it interesting that in the sense of what is going on right now, the first thing that triggered me was, oh, it's an election year. We got to do something for the people. We got to do something that looks important for the people. So that's what's going on here. Excuse me while I take a sip from my coffee here. Brewed only an hour and a half ago, so it's going to be a little cool. On a more serious note, for the last half of this, and I want you to hang with me here. This is a big deal. I have not done enough research on this, but we need to. When the pandemic, I'm going to try to use my words carefully here. I know Rumble's going to be all right with me. I know I'm going to try to be careful here because I want as many people to hear this as possible without denying the truth in the midst of that. While the pandemic was going on, I'm about to talk about something that's more sensitive. So anybody who's emotional, you're going to want to get off the program right now. But if you're not too emotional, this is going to be good for you because it is important. 3 years ago, one of a mentor of mine, an elder in our ministry, friend of the family, much wiser than me, made a statement that we're starting to actually see it come to pass. It was a very wise statement. And while the non-pandemic pandemic was going on, he stated, you watch, court systems and laws and lawsuits are going to start to counterbalance the freedoms that are being removed. See, we knew back then when the first shutdowns happened, the first thing that happens when you're a free person, matter of fact, the first thing that happens when you are free because you honor God, the first thing that happens, you go, oh no, 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 this doesn't pass the stink test at all. And so my mentor in leadership, in faith, in many things said, you watch, this constitutional system will begin to have a response to this and some balance. We didn't know how much at the time, and I don't know how much we're going to get still. It is going to happen as a result of it. And leading up to or from straight away, specifically when there was requirements. Now, the Trump administration claims that it accelerated warp speed the shots. The idea of the shots had been around since 1990 for that very type of shot, so it had been around for a while already. This is something we've all since learned. But on top of that, what is interesting is that once the Biden administration, again, I use the term assumed power, they mandated, and I don't know how you're going to be able to escape this. Well, I do. He's left the race, right? So they've done all kinds of junk to escape the things they've said. If you remember, and I remember watching the president threatening in a very threatening manner to anybody who would not do the Pfizer thing. Oh, I said the word. There was Pfizer. And I read Pfizer's own articles, and you can too. You can go to the Pfizer website and you can find out where their shots are and all these kinds of things. Pfizer's already paid out over $890 million in previous lawsuits against them for pain medications. And so it's not uncommon for the medical industry to receive charges against them. Well, what's interesting here, and there's three different elements I'm going to show in this, is that there's quite a bit happening right now coming against Pfizer because of the very thing we sensed at the time. We knew it at the time. It isn't right to force people. It's not right to force people. It is not for all the anti-shaming people on the left that say, oh, you shouldn't shame. All that happened through that, and I can say this with a tremendous amount of confidence, is the shaming of people that said, hey, would you mind if you just let me be free, please? Because the shame came and they said, well, if you want to be free, you're just being a part of killing people. And so the argument would come back, well, I'm not trying to kill people, and I'm not sure you're trying to kill people, but I want the choice of this. And so here it is. I've gone to, there's a article, current release, Chris Kobash, who is the state of Kansas's attorney general. Okay. And here it is. This was released on June 17th in Topeka, Kansas, 2024. And this article reads, let me see if I can get my source on. No, I'm sorry. This isn't an article from a news source. This is the Attorney General's office. There it is. Looking at it right here. The Attorney General's office releases this. Released on June 17th, 2024. Kansas AG sues Pfizer for misleading Kansans on COVID vaccine. I'm just reading the article. On June 17th, 2024, Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobash is suing Pfizer for misleading. It could be Kobach. I don't know. Kobash, again, I'm not great with last names, is suing Pfizer for misleading claims it made related to the vaccine. I'm just reading the article from Easy YouTube. Easy now. Don't do it. This is the Attorney General's office from here. Kobash and Deputy Attorney General Fran Oline, Assistant Attorney General Kaylee Schrader, and Assistant Attorney General General Malene Jack today announced the lawsuit at a press conference in Topeka. Quote, Pfizer made multiple misleading statements to deceive the public about its vaccine at a time when Americans needed the truth. I want to say that is a fact. And if you think otherwise, you're with the other side. I don't know how else can be said. Misled, untrue statements, pressure, shaming. We saw it all the time 3.5 years ago. We were watching it then. You remember when I said that mentor was saying, you watch, the court systems are going to come into play because that's how democracy works, and they're going to begin to counter. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of horrible things that have happened since, but the Attorney General's office in Kansas has started this. Now, apparently, a handful of other states are joining them in this endeavor on the lawsuit. I would encourage you to look up Iowa to see. I'm not sure if we're a part of this or not. I'm always going to be honest with you. If I haven't had, you know what? I don't have time. I don't always have time to look up all this information, right? I, like you, have a job too. I'm just trying to do my part in this. I really believe in what we're doing here at Rumble. I really believe what we're doing here at the Challenge. And I hope that you do too. I hope you're willing to jump in on this. We're not radicals. We're not trying to be nuts. There's no fear to be induced here because our confidence is in God. We have a relaxed confidence and a love for people that comes because of that love. And so these are, and when you go there, if you're joining us on Rebel right now, we have those coming up, so you can go check those out yourself. These articles, they're interesting articles, right? And so it's interesting to see that this is coming around, right? Because what we're finding, and this will be true, people will win these lawsuits. There's already lawsuits that have occurred that were lost for these institutions, for these government institutions, and for many of these companies that were requiring it, right? And so they are also saying that the complaint in this article from the Attorney General's office in Kansas also states that the risks of myocarditis and risks to pregnant women were not forthrightly stated as such. And it also says, additionally, Pfizer claimed its vaccine protected against variants of the COVID, even though the data showed otherwise. And we knew that then. We were called the conspiracy theorists. Do you remember that? Remember that we were talking about that? Now, I don't care if Pfizer keeps trying to get a vaccine down that actually works or is actually a vaccine. Instead of nicknamed something like a vaccine, when by definition it's not a vaccine. Not by definition is it that. And it says the pharmaceutical giant also suggested its vaccine prevented the transmission of COVID. Well, the federal government has already had its big sit down with Anthony Fauci. And all these questions are at least being publicized. But what's interesting to me is they genuinely tried to break your will in this. They genuinely tried to bust you in half in regards to this. And I am of the ilk and love to be with people who are of the same ilk. I do like milk. Of the same ilk of this. When somebody comes and tries to bust you in half, and what we're very used to as a Christian society says, oh, well, we just need to love them like Jesus did. And I do. I love them like Jesus did. But it doesn't stop me from pushing back and telling other people, you know what? This kind of hockey doesn't get to occur. And I'm very glad that these lawsuits are being put in place. And I'm really hopeful for their outcome because, the outcome is going to be true because they're unconstitutional. And courts are going to see it that way. They're going to see the results of this. What disappoints me is I hope the media is able to be honest with this. Because when Fauci sat down for his big apology terminology with the federal government at the Senate hearings, I couldn't even, the first 30 minutes was excuse after excuse. We didn't know this. We didn't know this. We didn't know this. We don't have time to go back into all the things. No, we knew this. We knew this. We knew this. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. All it was laying down a red carpet of excuses that Fauci jumped on. And everybody went, oh, man, that's right. We should just, who knew? Who knew? Who knew? There's no apology. There's no repentance. By the way, there's no fixing the government when it's unwilling to repent. There's no fixing you. There's no fixing you. There's no fixing me. If there's an unwillingness to look in the mirror and say, you know what, that was just wrong. That was wrong. And I need to turn in a direction towards righteousness because that was wrong. I'm bringing this. This is a powerful religious ideal that needs to be brought to the table. If you have a government, and it's funny, they say, oh, the Republicans, they're so proud they don't apologize for anything. Well, guess what? The Democrats are so proud they don't apologize for anything. Guess what? The government's unrepairable because it's uncorrectable, right? It's uncorrectable. You can see that even good, well-meaning Christian people in there are unwilling to take a full-on correction in this or stand against it completely. I am not that way. I'm standing against this entirely. And I hope we find people who are willing to stand against this too, because a huge, huge chunk of freedom was nibbled out of that cheese. It was ripped out of there for the very foundation of which all men and women live in this country. And I say men and women because that's all there is. Also, the complaint that it was alleged from the Kansas Attorney General's also says the complaint alleges that Pfizer coordinated. I'm reading from the Attorney General's paper here. This is not opinion. It's just right here, just reminding YouTube of this. The complaint also alleges that Pfizer coordinated with social media officials to censor speech. Do you think? All right, I added that. That wasn't in the article. That was sarcasm. Media officials to censor speech critical of COVID-19 vaccines and decline to participate in the federal government's vaccine development program, Operation Warp Speed, bad program, to avoid, I inserted that too, to avoid government oversight. This conversation could go on and on and on, but Kansas has done, kudos to this guy and his staff. They are stone cold brave, man. I'm telling you. And I hope more states get on with the board. I know there's a handful of them that are getting on board right now, but more states. But I want to say, not only is the state coming against what has happened, what Pfizer was promoting, and everything that it said that it did, and everything we were told it did not do. When I was a kid and you lied, that was one of the most egregious things you could do that your parents had to correct you for the most, because that's a big deal. And when these people have been caught lying, I wonder what kind of panking they're going to get, or if there's going to be one at all, because nobody wants a panking anymore. Nobody wants a spanking. Nobody wants a panking anymore. Nobody deserves a panking anymore. That's the belief of that, by the way, is why we do not correct wrong and why wrong prevails. And I am thankful there's people brave enough who want to give that panking. Here's two more articles that came up. This one is the Washington Examiner. www.washingtonexaminer.com news and business. This is a United Airlines. The article is United Airlines may have to pay. Are you ready for this? $1 billion in damages. Are you ready for this? This again has to do with industry. So I want to touch on this too. So you got a state filing a lawsuit against. I'm going to say it this way: against it's not misinformation. I had a conversation once online here with somebody who was saying, well, that's misinformation, which is a liberal term. But we who are responsible for our own lives understand that lying is lying. Misinformation is like, well, I'm just throwing out there. Who knows, but it might be correct. It might not be correct. There is a stark contrast difference between lying and misinformation. Okay. We need to call it that. And so they have been caught lying. That's all there is to it. They've been caught lying. Look at this. United Airlines may have to pay over $1 billion in damages for religious discrimination. So if you want to check that out on the Washington Examiner, I'm going to read some of this here so that you understand that this now also has an impact in the business area, hospitals, airline industry. And I can't wait to have my brother back on this kind of stuff. He is out indeed doing his job. And he saw this firsthand in his industry that he works on in this, where everybody was like, again, threatened. Hey, if you don't take this in the arm to save everybody else's lives by taking a risk yourself, you're required to do this or you lose your job. So here it is. I'm reading from the Washington Post exclusive. United Airlines may be forced to pay upwards of $1 billion after a federal court ruled to grant nationwide class action status to over 2,200 employees who were placed on unpaid leave for choosing not to get the jab against COVID-19 during the pandemic. So this federal court ruled that there should be able to be, that there's a nationwide class action status, 2,200 employees. They said, because of our freedom, we're not going to take this. And they were eliminated from their job. A judge, continuing the article here, a judge in the Northern District of Texas, Fifth Circuit, ruled on Friday that all United Airlines employees put on unpaid leave despite having a religious exemption, which is allowed and required to be honored in this Constitution of all employers. We saw it happen here with one of the medical clinics. We had guys that were a part of the men's ministry who both worked for that, and they filed those exemptions and they were honored. They were honored. That's what they're there for, right? Especially, I mean, Christians are some of the last people that are allowed to file these exemptions. Right? They're some of the last people that actually get to file these exemptions. All the other religious faiths, and yes, I am picking on those, they seem to be pushed out front and say, oh yeah, but you don't have to do that because you're this, or you're that, or you're Muslim, or you're Hindu, or these things, and you have a right to complain. Guess what? So do you. You're a Christian. Bring religion to the table. Bring it to the discussion. So here it is. Here it is. The Fifth Circuit in Texas ruled on Friday that all United Airlines employees put on unpaid leave despite having a religious exemption. So it was lawful for them not to take it. To the vaccine can join the Zambrano versus United Airlines case, making it one of the largest religious discrimination class action lawsuits in history. Don't be afraid. This is just a sign. It is a promise that your own country will come against you because of your faith. You choose not to do what you believe to be wrong. What you believe to be wrong because of the faith that lives inside of you. Remember, Christianity is the only faith where when you believe in the purchase price, when you believe in Christianity, the God that you believe in, Yahweh, he comes and he lives inside of you. It's actually God saying no to that. Think of that. It goes on to say in this article, and I think this is interesting. So again, this is United Airlines. That's a lot of money that they absolutely overreached authority because they were afraid. And I know what happens to countries when they live in so much fear that they just start dominating their people. It is a horrible thing. I've been to countries where it is so extreme, it destroys the government. It waylays its people, and they can barely function. And it's not till freedoms are given to them and private ownership of business and property that it starts to grow again. So this article goes on in the United States Airline court case here. It goes on, it says, I've never seen anything this big. Sherry Walker, co-founder of Airline Employees for Health Freedom. This is an organization now, right? This is what happens here. Airline Employees for Health Freedom told the Washington Examiner, Walker is one of 2,211 class members in the lawsuit. That is pretty amazing. So we see it in the airline industry. The state of Kansas is coming against Pfizer for actually not being truthful about what it did or didn't do to manipulate people to get the shot. And yes, people did do that. They were manipulated into this, right? And so there is, I've got one more article here. You got to get on this because there it is in the airline ministry. And here it is in the Ninth Circuit rules against, there's a case called LAUSD Laws Vaccine Mandate. And this one also, I'm going to get to here, purpose-drivenlawyers.com. Purpose-drivenlawyers.com. Ninth Circuit rules against the Laws Vaccine Mandate. This is an interesting article too, because we are addressing, again, these are three different types of lawsuits that are all coming to rest. And again, my mentor in the faith said, you watch, there's going to be a pushback within our legal system. And so far, We're starting to see that happen now. And people need to be aware of this. A lot of people do not know this sort of thing goes on because that's what the courts do. They bump back and they go, no, 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 no. Overextension, overextension, overextension. And to be honest with you, as people, we need all the help we can get for bumping back against a government that doesn't seem to have restraint on what it believes it should have authority over its people. I want to say something. I believe in submitting and honoring the authority that is over me. Now, if you want to have that discussion, the Bible says what the government's role is in that authority. The government no longer walks in that role. So personally, I believe that I have a mandate, and I believe you have a mandate to then say no and resist any government that is outside of its own legal system. And in the United States of America, that is called the Constitution. And we are obligated. So if you honor the government of the United States of America, you're honoring its people. Hear me now when I say this. If you honor the government of the United States of people and you pray for the government of the United States of people, you're praying for the people because its government is the people. And when the government that is set forth over the people is for the people, by the people, then the people are responsible, which is why the Constitution has it in place to stop that government from doing what the people never allowed that government to do. Does that make sense? I want you to ponder that a little bit. For those of you who say, well, we're just supposed to go to jail and we're supposed to do that, and you can. I want to tell you, your faith can take you to jail. I hope you go to jail for preaching Jesus. I believe I could very much so someday be in jail for preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I believe that when I get there, should that happen, I'll sit there and turn to the guy next to me and go, hey, man, do you know Jesus Christ? I'll turn to the guard and say, hey, man, God bless you. Do you know Jesus Christ? Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to kick. I'm not going to scream. But when we have things in place in our own government that have obligated the citizenry to actually react against the government, we have an obligation. But we have become lazy. Somebody has fed it into our system that we think as Christians, we should not be violent. I would agree. We should just be forceful with the truth. We are responsible for that. We, in fact, are the government. Even though it's a representative, we are responsible for telling the government when they've overstepped. And the Constitution has laid that out. We live in a time in our lives where that might feel dicey for some, but you do a little bit of reading, it's as clear as a bell. I encourage everybody to download the Constitution and read it semi-regularly so that you understand you are responsible. You are the government of it. Kelly Chang here with the Law and Mediation Offices. This is the next article I want to talk about. The Ninth Circuit Court, here we go, and I'm reading from this article. The Ninth Circuit rules against LAUSD vaccine mandate, LAUSD vaccine mandate. Today, the Ninth Century Court of Appeal issued an amazing ruling reopening a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of COVID-era vaccine mandates. If you go to this article, it has other cross-references in regards to this to be followed. I think this is very interesting because these are lawsuits that have come up because we are having to hold accountable where the Constitution was not honored. The Constitution has not been followed. This goes on to say the initial lawsuit is this: the underlying lawsuit against LAUSD, second largest school district in the nation. So now we're talking about a school district. We were talking about airlines. We were talking about the state of Kansas. We're talking about business and not honoring the religious exemption, which is why it is there, even when there's an emergency, because people think it's so important for fear to govern us, and that is ridiculous and foolish. The initial lawsuit of this one, which is talking about a school district, the second largest school district in the nation, filed a lawsuit was filed by the Health Freedom Defense Fund. Again, here we go. Thank goodness for freedom and health. By the way, the Obama administration did everything they could. When you're involved in government, health, by the way, freedom is what you give up for that. By the way, I personally, I hold health insurance on my family. And I stay away from all the discounts. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I stay away from all the governmental discounts because it's your freedoms you give up. And I was told that look all the money you're going to save each month. And what's interesting is my income changes. What they do is go, well, because of your health insurance, we just take more taxes. So if you make more money, we're simply going to take more money for your health insurance. You don't have the freedom to choose. We determine what you pay, when you pay, and how you pay. It's not a discount. It is effectively, without question, a tax. So I refuse that, and I pay the full Monty on that to maintain my freedom. And to be honest with you, it shocked our representative. Well, you could say, no, sorry, freedom's more important, and it costs. Your freedom costs. It really does cost. So the underlying lawsuit was filed by the Health Freedom Defense Fund in November 2021, challenging the constitutionality of the district's March 2021 policy requiring employees to obtain the COVID vaccine and show proof of that or be terminated. See, here we go again, where the threat on your very livelihood is there. That's a problem. And these lawsuits are pushing back for a reason, because there is still freedom in people going, I have choices that I am allowed to make in this country. And so when there's a threat, when you teach in a government institution and they threaten you with something they are not allowed in any way to threaten you with, and then say, or you'll lose your job. I'm not sure where that exists anywhere. I'm sure it doesn't exist anywhere in this Constitution or in the Freedom of Employment Act, the right to be employed. This doesn't get to happen. And now we're seeing the pushback. And I'm going to tell you, the mainstream media is not going to, they're not going to reveal this stuff to you, right? Who knows? Maybe because this is going on, maybe that's why they're exchanging prisoners with Russia right now. Because they want you to be less aware or paying attention to the fact that these lawsuits are coming against, Kansas is pushing it against Pfizer. The Freedom of Health Act, Freedom of Health Institution is filing lawsuits. United Air could pay an exuberant amount of money for being Marxist in its ideals and its business and forcing people. And then this school district also receiving charges against it for a government institution. Now, here's a government institution forcing people, or we take away your income. You will be terminated for this. It is fear enacted the most unreasonable amount of reasoning I've ever seen 3.5 years ago. I've never seen anything like it. Fear is a bad leader. And guess what? So is guilt. Both of those don't lead anybody well. So I'm just throwing that out there. And continuing in this article by Kelly Chang, it says, the legality, and this is against the school district, the legality, the second largest school district in the nation, the legality of vaccine mandates is based on an old case from 1905, Jacobson versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The Jackson Court established that it is within the police power of a state to provide the compulsory vaccination. That's what that court established. The Supreme Court in Jacobson upheld the constitutionality of a state compulsory vaccination law enacted to combat smallpox outbreak. The court found that the vaccine mandate was rational in protecting the public with health and public safety. However, the Jacobson case does not stand for the proposition that anything goes in mandating vaccine. The previous court's applications of Jacobson is wrong, as it stated. In the context of the current pandemic, several courts have applied Jacobson to find that mandatory vaccine policies at state universities and state executive agency employees meet the rational basis test. In recent cases, plaintiffs have attempted to distinguish their cases from Jacobson by arguing that the COVID-19 vaccines are not vaccines, but are instead gene therapy products, or that the mandates are not the result of legislative process. The Ninth Circuit today overturned a lower court decision that applied Jacobson. It said, addressing the merits, the panel held that the district court misapplied the Supreme Court's decision in Jacobson versus Massachusetts in concluding that the policy survived rational basis review. Now, back in the day when they were trying to stop smallpox and all those kinds of things, a vaccine was rightfully defined. Also, because of what began to happen to the health of children, the Child Protection Act was activated not many years after this, requiring that if a vaccine is administered, it must be shown to the individual, and the risks must be specifically pronounced, and then the individual receiving the vaccine is allowed the opportunity to receive that vaccine by signing, I read the risk, I read of the chances of what this could do to me, and I'll take it. What many people don't know is the Child Protection Act was set forth because they were having problems and children were dying with new vaccines coming out. And also women's pregnancies, we're starting to see a termination line where we're seeing more and more of that. There'll be more on this to come too, because we see similar outbreaks happening here in the United States, where similar responses are happening to the vaccines that are occurring. Give it time. We'll let it all pan out. We'll see what this really looks like and whether or not they can tie these to it. But there has been an uptick in cancer and low pregnancy rates and premature deaths of infants in pregnancies. This is and when you think about it, it was required. Many of you folks didn't know this, that when you went to go get your shot, the law states that it's mandated that they handed you a piece of paper and says, look, here's the risks. You go over this and then you decide. I would like to hear from one individual, where a medical professional offered that information to you. I would like to hear that. I met a few brave souls that actually went to the Walgreens, the CCVs, CVCs, or whatever they are, and actually asked for that information in advance. And by law, they were required to give it, and they did. I read that paperwork. I was able to read that paperwork and see the risks. And what was interesting is that paperwork did not line up with the media. It did not line up with the news. It did not line up with our government at all. A couple years into that, they wouldn't give you those papers anymore. Anyway, you're going to have to think that through. We have to think that through. I, for one, am thankful we're seeing the pushback. I, for one, am grateful that this is beginning to happen. I don't know if it's going to do a great overturn for what's gone on in this country. I believe the damage may already been done, but I believe a few may be vindicated. And I think the rights of those, there should be an ability for large companies like Pfizer and them to get their pankin. And I hope this happens, not because I'm against the makers of the product, but they need to see there's a moral construct that needs to happen. That the medical community is, in fact, not God. We are all subject to a creator. And there's not a medical profession in the world that is above the creator. There is not one emergency in the planet that is above the ability, the capacity, and the sovereignty of our creator God. And there is not one person that cannot work through every single one of those by letting Jesus Christ be the Lord of the life and letting him pay with his blood for your sins. I think it showed us all during these last several years where we were with our faith, where we were with God, and what condition we were in when it began to come. Was it fear, or was it trust and hope and faith in a God who is sovereign? I want to thank you for joining us today on The Challenge. I hope you can like and share this. Hope that would be something you do. We love, and we're starting to get lots of responses for this. More integration, more conversation. I hope you bring what you believe, understand why you believe it, and the discussions of all the things that we bring here, and you come and join us on the table Wednesdays at 4 p.m. And I also want to put another shout, get that Rumble app downloaded and come and get involved in the conversation. Also, I want to put a shout out, whitedoveministries.net, for supporting what we do here and sponsoring this work. And if you ever want to get involved in assisting that sponsorship, go to whitedoveministries.net, reach out to us. We appreciate who you are, what you're doing. We thank God for what he is doing. And I want to tell you, choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me, in my house, I will serve the Lord.